I love that idea.
But in the end, also what was looking at is Julian Big and
It's black.
it's called Freedom Regained.
Okay.
But it's the possibility of free will. It's Julian Becky. I'll send you
Okay, yeah.
I'll send you the link.
Oh, good, it's okay.
Because he talks
I thought I'd get a different
it's not
position.
just that you want to do it,
Yeah.
you want to do it.
Because people are creatures of
So
habit
you
though.
don't
In our
both
Tai
higher
Chi
and lower.
This is my chair. No, I do. I do.
But in our Tai Chi lessons, they used to make us move
Move
around
around,
because
yeah.
they said
Yeah.
you'll wait and you won't think it, but you'll all go to the same position every
Well, that's
week.
what I've
Have to
noticed.
do it.
Whenever
But there's a
you
whole
do it, when I
range of
noticed I was
things. There's the
coming in, when I was
neurology,
speaking,
the
I couldn't work out where to sit.
Where to sit?
Yeah, because there's
And
places.
when I was in that really trapped
Before
You're
the
talking about
one.
Julian.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Because I was the first
I wish
here.
I wanted to do it.
You know, that
wish
if I
wanted
was
to.
sitting there, it
What
wouldn't
did
bother
you
me.
get?
No, just
At
say,
10 to- by 10
that's
till
what it
5.
feels like.
You have to.
You have to want to.
So I can get the coffee up.
Before you want to.
Yeah.
That's what.
To
Yeah.
share the abundance.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
And Jackie,
It is.
well, it might be a good place to sit. There's a camera behind
It
you.
is. I'd rather to control.
It might be a good place.
I looked over there and thought, oh, we go there.
Right,
Would you
we'll
like
start.
a tea?
No, something's going to
Sure.
tell me. Well, no.
Do you want me to share that first?
Yeah, tell that first, that's really nice.
Yes.
Start.
Yeah.
Okay, before I take the first bite of breakfast, I'll have my buzz and then I can merrily get on and eat my breakfast. So I just came in and I saw Rachel and I thought, oh, I know what my buzz was. My buzz was that Clive shared Rachel as his buzz in our team meeting. Because he told a story about a couple of carers and one of them was Rachel and he was so pleased that Rachel was thinking about PhD and he was sort of saying, I think I might have had a bit of influence and sort of supporting along the way, and his buzz was such a nice buzz because he was saying, but it's a real group effort because I realise where people come from and there's all these other people who are involved in getting people to where they are, but it was a buzz for him to have been part of that journey. So I thought that was a really nice buzz.
So you see, your influence stretches far.
In fact, I'm writing about it. No, this is my buzz. That I thought, it must be 18 months. I've been trying to get this book together on the 3 elements of living theory, which is that you explain your own influence in your own learning, in the learning of others, and this idea of the learning of social formation. So we're having some kind of cultural influence. And tonight, I'm hoping to have the first complete draft ready.
The whole book.
Yes, so that's my buzz. I've really got on with it well this week. Yes, that's me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's had a haircut.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, it's all right.
Trivial,
Yes,
but
yes,
it's
yes,
very nice.
yes. Nino on the bare flat. Yes, he
Oh, I see.
Well, I've got a couple of buzzes which were I've been shortlisted for a 0.5 graphics job at Western College. I'm quite excited about that because although it's overall is graphics, which is something I do anyway, it's not something that I sort of specialise in, but they want somebody who can deliver the other areas as well, which is drawing, painting, sculpture, sort of multimedia, so it's quite a nice thing. And my second buzz is I've been selected for a bursary with AN magazine. It's they call it a professional development bursary, but what it is basically a blog and about £1,000 just to work with an artist or other artists of my choice. So that's been really good because it ups the profile to, I don't know if you're familiar with AN magazine, but AN magazine was a contemporary art magazine that started about 30 odd years ago, and it's the magazine for contemporary artists, if you like. So it sort of adds credence to my work, really, in being asked and being offered this bursary. So it's not a lot of money, but it's the credence, really.
Yeah.
It's a thought that counts. So that's good.
I suppose, I mean, work's just so busy. It's, you just sit down and till you go home later in the end of the day. It's just so busy. But in that, actually, there's quite a lot of satisfaction about getting the job done and knowing some of it you've done a good job, some of it you haven't. I haven't, I'm not looking at you. Some of it I haven't. So that's, in a way, you know, it's quite good. But my buzz, sad living contradiction that I am, my buzz this week has been actually analysing the data for moving on up. Well, not analysing it so much, but putting it into a picture form. And all these statistics quite fun, really. So I've been learning Mac charts and things to show, to demonstrate, so that you've got an instant visual of what we've done. And it didn't half look impressive, actually. It does. But I haven't yet worked out. So obviously I've only been looking at those who actually turned up to groups. I haven't yet looked at the overall referrals and how many actually made it to the end. I haven't done that yet. And anyway, I have to confess, this is confession time, I don't know how you work out a percentage anyway, so someone else will have to do that.
Google it, I always Google it, depending on which percentage you want.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And there you go, confession.
I've never done that, it's always been a trouble.
I can never remember,
How
because
you
there's
do it.
different ways depending on what type of percentage you want.
I see.
So I just Googled the one
I know there's a thing written on my wall, but when I looked at it, telling me how to do it, my son put it there for me, but I still don't know what it means. So.
There's an automatic calculator, so you can Google it, you'll find it, you can just put the numbers in.
Really? Yeah. No, right, anyway. But it looks lovely. Looks nice. And I realise it's not that that's the kind of research I like to do, so let me off the hook on that one. But it's that I actually love the creativity of making something, so it's making these graphs and looking how to do it.
Graphics.
Yeah, I enjoyed myself. On that.
There is someone in the organisation I've discovered who can help me with that. David Parker, who's been helped me with stuff.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so
You
I'll
know
see
about
what
percentages at the very least.
His pictures.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll write that down.
Okay. So my buzz is about the Literature Festival this week, which has been amazing. I went to listen to Gloria Steinem, who's 81, and Joan Bakewell, who I think is 83, or it's the other way around. Two amazingly, healthy, women with so much to say about life, the universe, and everything, and their careers and what they've achieved. So that has been fabulous because no fear about 80. Now it's just great. And my son, who is interested in creative writing, has been part of a writers' workshop which has been supported by the Holborn Museum and the Egg Theatre, and is part of this festival. And their group has developed over the last 6 months a collaborative novel which on the theme of being lost, and they presented their piece for an hour because it was obviously edited. They all contributed, and it was amazing. They presented at the Literature Festival last night at 6:15. There was about 13 of them, ranging from 11 to 17. These children, and it was a triumph. It was just amazing. Honestly, it was fabulous. The way that they presented it and read it with just really powerful. Anyway, so I'm just so proud. I'm just so proud. Not of just him, but of just what these kids have done. And they were so brave to stand up on a stage in front of all these strangers, and do their thing. And there was one girl who was really struggling. She was stuttering, and she was obviously really, really anxious. I thought she was going to faint. And the rest of them, just quietly, hung on to her, and she got through it, and it was just amazing. Anyway, so I'm a bit full of all that.
Just showed you, it all works out in the end.
I know, absolutely, yeah.
Mine's work related, and it's about someone that I sort of started working with when I first started the job, and it's a carer, and I was quite worried about her situation. There was lots going on, and my role, I don't usually deal with sort of more complex cases in what I do. It's quite quick. So I meet carers in the hospital, I try and give them a bit of information and then maybe pass them on to colleagues. But with this carer, I'd been shadowing another colleague from another organisation and had sort of have met this carer, and she finds it very difficult to engage with other people, so she's more likely to sort of talk to people if she's met them or sort of had someone going in. So I was quite worried, and I try not to sort of take things home, but I think when you've got you really want to help someone, it's quite difficult. It kind of is always there in the background, and I took it to my colleagues. We have sort of like a clinical supervision, and asked for advice on what they thought I should do, and came up with loads of ideas, loads of experience in the group, and the plan was for me to sort of pass this on to another colleague who's very experienced, to sort of go and meet with this carer on quite a regular basis and do some work with her, to support her and her husband, who she looks after. But the worry was that she doesn't always like new people, and she often says, no, I don't want you. I think we didn't want to force ourselves to help her, but we knew that once she gets to know people, actually she feels like she does benefit from this help. And this week she agreed to meet both me and my colleague, and we went round to see her and her husband, and we had an absolutely lovely time. And my colleague now has sort of started forming a really nice relationship with her, and it's been passed over, and that's just really nice. Because I think it's, again, it's a real joint working with other organisations who sort of first introduced her to me, and then all my colleagues, and then passing it over to someone with a lot of experience. So that's really nice feeling to think, oh, yeah, she's hopefully going to get some good support. She seemed really happy, so that was really nice. Yeah.
The thing for you is to think about what is it that in that relationship, those four people, what was it that made the difference? Because that's the key to absolutely everything you do, isn't it? How do you create those kind of relationships where you know you're in the same team and you're going to work together, and those connected relationships? How do you actually do that? It's such an important thing. That could be your study, really.
And it's there's so many such sort of balances that if you maybe push too far or said the wrong thing or talked to the wrong person, that it could just tip and really go wrong. So it's so many sort of fine balances that
but then when you've got it, when you've actually made a connection with the other person, you can push your luck. And you can actually be confrontational, you can push them a bit. And they're likely to be able to absorb it because they know they're in the safe place.
Got in there.
Yeah, it'd be good to come back to this, I think, when we've got
I was looking after my granddaughter on Wednesday because she wasn't well enough to go to nursery, and I had to use my annual leave, blah, blah, blah. And she said to me, "Granny, how old are you?" I thought, okay. I said, "How old do you think I am?" 60, and I'm thinking, yeah, you're right, teen. And I had the day off because I had actually planned to do some of my coaching assignment work. So I thought I would I'll have 2 days off instead. So yesterday I had lots and lots of interruptions at home, but I actually managed to do probably about half of my very first coaching assignment. Please don't ask me to share it yet, okay? So I was like, oh, actually, once you get a head around this, it's all right. So, quite pleased with myself.
Right.
Little fellas, another thing from my living post.
picture of a living poster. So that's a massive amount of work in a book.
Let's have a look.
Oh, do you want to look?
So look.
Oh, yeah. Okay. These guys would understand this.
Let's have a look.
I'll show you later. I'll show you
You
later.
can see it,
Through the
Rachel.
back.
We can see it through the
Rachel, we
back.
can see it.
Yeah. This is it. This is the story.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Men's clothes to.
Whose boots are those shoes?
Yeah.
They'll be Rachel's.
And yours. The
But it's also about inclusionality and Rainer.
Yeah.
It's about the learning edge,
Yeah.
and it's about I am neither and both.
Yeah.
So inclusionality for me is both and.
Yeah, yeah.
And both and on the unknown,
Yeah.
and the and gets formed with you.
Yeah.
So
So did you also
That's
draw
really
it?
Isn't it, isn't it?
You're a closet artist,
no, those are the boots that I went to war in.
Work
Those
boots.
Photograph.
yeah, and I photographed this about 10 years ago, and I found it in my archive when I was going through what can you see.
So you found a photo.
So I found a photograph, and that will go into in my living poster thing. That will be part of the past.
Wow.
So I won't tell you my other buzz until later.
Yeah, we're waiting.
There's no sense of suspense in this.
No, definitely.
No.
The first bit was
Immediate
really
gratification. We don't hold it around this.
Well, it was last week. It was about building resilience, and thank you very much for the touch that you put on my shoulder as you walked out of the door.
Oh.
Don't know what it did, but it did something, and it was lovely. But I was at the university on Wednesday doing the interviews for the social work, the degree,
Social work students.
social work students. And we had this student came in, this potential, and on paper she looked amazing. So you had her personal statement, you had the academic thing, and then you had her response to the paper that they'd been given to analyse beforehand, which was about asylum seekers and silence. And my children maintained silence in asylum seeking and all that sort of thing. And it just looked fantastic. And it was one of those where you then look at the interview thing and you think, well, I don't need to interview this person. And she came in, and I have never witnessed such power in somebody in an interview situation. And she had every single answer that was required. But at the same time, there was this terrible, I say terrible, it was a vulnerability. And I can even feel it, that nervousness of speaking. And you could tell that that was underneath all the surface stuff that she was coming out with. And she, one of the questions was, when have you been discriminated against and how did you deal with that? What did you think? And she said, well, how haven't I been discriminated against? I'm fat, I'm a smoker, I'm disabled, and about homosexuality. And it was just this whole package, yet she was coming in wanting to be a social worker. And I'm sitting there thinking, now, how do I deal with this? I thought, well, I'll connect with this vulnerability thing, and we talked about it. And then afterwards, because there's the tick sheet of you just have to go in and if you know that somebody's going to be okay, you just tick it and that's fine. It's when they're not going to be okay, you have to justify why. And it was so hard, and after she'd gone, Justin and I talked about it. We said, well, what are we going to do here? Because, it was all there. It worked out that we had doubts whether in the role of being a social worker she would be able to demonstrate and develop resilience in herself and others simultaneously, because her power was so big that while she wanted to help so much, she would also overpower somebody. So she had to develop her own resilience, which she got in abundance, but could she harness herself sufficiently? And what became apparent was the thought that then saying, well, can you have her as a student, which obviously wasn't my call, because that's not where obviously you've got the academic interview there. And it was the question, he said, well, she'd be a real challenge in the, you know, you could see that she would just disrupt a classroom because of her power. And it was the thought, and I said, well, I think she'd got such enormous potential, but she was high risk and high challenge, but she would need high support. And the question was, had the university got the support to be able to manage this risk that could be a phenomenal success, or it could be a real, you know, terrible crash and burn. And I thought, do you know what? Coaching would be the answer. If you could coach her at the same time through her learning, but I don't think that's available at the university at the moment. But it was buzz, because I felt as if there was something. What enabled me to connect with her was that the one thing that she had no idea about was that we had to introduce ourselves, and I said, and I'm a veteran. And she had no idea. That was the one thing where I thought, yes, I can trump you there. You don't know anything about that. But I was able to hold myself back from that point of view. But it was a real challenge. And I'm excited to know, because I don't know the outcome. I don't know whether she'll be selected for training or not. And I don't need to know. And the next time I'll find out is possibly next
In
year.
the classroom.
In the classroom.
Cool.
Follow
Well,
that.
that makes all sorts of sense. One buzz and one thought, because I've just noticed your boots, right? The buzz is that I've had
Not these.
I've had a meeting every day this week, I've just realised. It's really good, I haven't come out of any of them being cross. But really, something really exciting's come out of every single one of them. Oh, yeah, I hadn't realised that. And we've been talking about reflective diaries and things like that. And one of the people we've been working with, do you each keep a reflective diary? But the difficulties of actually walking your own talk. And somebody has been sort of sending us virtually daily, isn't it? Sort of three things that have gone well, he's noticed, and then the thing that he wanted to take into the future, the thing we were working on. Not necessarily a difficulty or problem. So that's one excitement. But seeing this, and your boots, and something I heard on the radio, because it's International Women's Day on Tuesday. International Women's Day on Tuesday. After Mother's Day on Sunday. So lots of women around at the moment. And one of the radio programmes, the woman was talking about, she'd done all sorts of things, and then she'd got into sort of doing fashiony stuff. Shoes, and how debilitating they are. And she because she wanted to look really fashionable, she put on sort of one about 2 sizes too small, and ended up in hospital having to have them cut out of her. It sounded awful. But this, and your boots now, because the women's clothes, we've talked about this before, are seriously not functional. No pockets. If you want to get anything that is waterproof and doesn't look as though you're going hiking, you don't. Yeah. And shoes. And I've noticed on the news and things, the women's heels are getting longer. They no longer just seem to be 6 inches, they seem to be these little spindles. I can't see how they can possibly enhance your sort of life. But so what you've got on is both fashionable and functional. So I wondered whether that's the next one on, of actually sort of, whether you sort of go from the functionality to fashion, and then you go beyond trying to please everybody. Some people manage to wear these sort of, I've got to admit, I've never managed to. I don't know how you. Never mind. But the
I look like Tina Turner.
Yeah. And that notion as to why people wear them, like you said, Yvonne said that she wore them because she thought it was sort of more attractive to blokes. And so it's sort of transcending
Do you remember?
Because it makes you walk differently.
Yeah, but they don't realise how they're walking, do they? Do you remember that Dick Emery?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Do you remember Pauline Carr? You know, one of his first.
And there is nothing more hilarious than watching somebody just, you know, it's not funny, but it is, when somebody goes over in a pair of those.
Yeah.
And then they recover, and then they pretend that nothing's happened. It's that emotion.
It was brilliant.
That moment, how do you hold that? Because that's the moment that people hold. Isn't it? When you just have that, your moment of vulnerability, as you go, and you think, why give yourself that risk?
Yeah.
You know, I need to have my feet on the ground.
But the image that sticks with me is Some Like It Hot.
Oh,
You've got
yes.
the two. You've got it's Jack Lemmon, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's the I've not seen the film.
Tony
Not
Curtis,
films,
The two of them have to dress up as women bass players to try and avoid
Okay.
getting massacred by the mob, right? And he's wearing these heels, and he says, "How do they manage to walk on these things?" And he watches Marilyn Monroe go, "Was it Jello on wheels, something like that? It's Jello is jelly, sort of thing."
Yeah.
And then there's that shot of her doing Running Wild, walking there. You know the bit where she's doing her ukulele, Running Wild. Come on, guys. Anyway, so
No
that would be the
control.
epitome of a woman on heels and the way it makes them move, except when they fall over, which is what Jack Lemmon did and trying to recover himself. So.
I did think it's so
So
funny
you're
because on the bus on the way back from rugby on a Saturday, often we're coming sort of through Bristol at about between 7 and 8 at night, and you always know which girls are wearing impossible shoes because of the way they're kind of thrown
makes them,
forward,
yeah.
and it's like, oh yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, you have to walk in certain ways in order to be able to do so.
Yeah, there's a definite gender bias in this conversation, I think.
No, but what comes to
But I think what we're
story.
saying is we're all saying that it's ridiculous.
yes,
Yeah.
and women wear them
Well, maybe you don't.
because they think it's attractive
No,
to the blokes, even though it can cripple their feet.
that's what Yvonne was very clear about, and she was wearing these very long ones. I said, Yvonne, why? It's staggering. Look, She said, well, it's because we think it looks sexier. It's the posture and the way we walk. And I'm thinking, can I just mention this? That as you're speaking, I videotaped on Tuesday the computer club at St Stephen's, and these are kids, 6 to 9 years old. And what was fascinating was the difference between the boys and the girls in this relational sense. So as we're speaking, Grace, that sense of the care and attention you were given to this one individual. I've got on video these girls all along one line, and one other came in and there's no space for her, and she was a friend of one on the here. Now it took John Reeves, who was leading it, and it's quite a long time to spend over a minute trying to convince this one girl that she could move to this other place and her friend could join her, right? Now, the negotiation that went on then between these girls about who would sit with who and where, and there was hand-holding, there was all this, and the boys, they just go.
Not if they're not sat together, and not if when John's actually moved them. So you don't see those.
Are you
kids.
disagreeing with me?
Yes.
I've got it on video about the girls. There's definitely a relational quality about them, which is quite different, this gender issue.
The way
They
it's
do it in a
expressed
different
is
way.
I
They
think
do,
it's
they
the
do.
way it gets expressed is different, so I'd
Yeah.
like to see you demonstrate the same with the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
It's
a
really
different negotiation
Just
don't
process.
it's very different, very different.
Mm.
But
Absolutely.
could I just ask this? It's just the last 2 weeks ago, got a really superb video, and it's, I think, going to be helpful to Chris Jones with her doctorate. And it was a moment when Sonia opened up for Chris to talk about empowerment. And Chris, there and then, started to reform her question for her doctorate. And it started to come out, rather than how do I empower someone, that she actually started to get to about how do I contribute to an environment within which empowerment can take place. And what I'm curious about, just in terms of the relationship where Sonia opened up that dialogue, but it wasn't taking responsibility for the other. It was doing what I think you were talking about with the person that you were really very sensitive about. How could you negotiate something which would be helpful to her? And there's something in that quality of relationship which seems to me really worth looking at, where Robin said, look, please, you know, that's very important, and if you could build up an explanation of what it was you were doing. So I'm hoping we can come back to this, have a look at the video, because that is what I think Sonia was doing in a non-impositional way. Am I making sense here? That you know, that point where you can, through your enthusiasm, kill off.
And you did it for me last week after. I don't think it's on the video, but you did. I know that you did it for me last week. So there's a flow. There is some flow that's going on, and I think it's interesting because we then there was a slight. It was an exchange that happened here because Sonia was here and I was there. Do you kind of remember?
Yeah.
There was just this exchange. That's all we need to call it. But from it, the humour came. And so today it's been a very light-hearted thing. So there's a lifting of we'll call it the spirit. But going back to the gender thing, we had a connection, and it was about bonding with your brother through adversity. That's what. And I did the same this week with. I'm bonding with my brother through looking after my parents, and my mum's got dementia. And my little buzz was that we went on the number 13 bus for a night. He came to stay with us on one Monday night. He was off to give a keynote speech because he's quite high up in NHS England. He was off but he came to stay with us. So how do you get this massive policy person to come and say, look, you've got your mother to sort out at the same time. So we've got this going on at home. But it was the fact that we got on the bus together outside our house. We went into town and I sat next to him on the bus. Do you know, on the bus together since it was the Dun March in 1976. And he didn't really get it, but my memory of that was going back to the boys and girls. He was bullied and he used to bully me. So my memory of being on the bus with him was when he used to beat me up on the bus. But it doesn't matter now because he's just so horrible. But I love him so much. You know, what's your brother? And they just don't get it when I say, oh, he's horrible. But he is, he's disgusting, he's horrible. But the reason he's horrible is because he's had to put up with so much. And what he's got is this phenomenally sharp humour that is so disrespectful, but he uses it in the appropriate place. So the person he's only just taken over, he's headhunted to do this job, and he's taken over, he's got a team with him, and there's a person who's not pulling a weight, and I said, are you enjoying the job, Jonathan? And he said, well, this woman is known as Mrs. Capacity, because she says, I haven't got the capacity to do this. Well, of course, capacity means lots of things in different settings, doesn't it? So we've now got this character between us. So we say, hey, how's Mrs. Capacity this week? And it's just caricaturing the bad behaviour, but it's using that edgy humour. Opened that up for us. It was developing humour.
What I'd love to do is look a little, if you like, carefully at just some of the visual, if you like, data that we've got, where we check out with each other the sense that we're making of it. And so, where Sonia, where you opened it up for both Rachel and also with Chris. Now, it could just be called facilitation, right? You could, right. So, it was something about the values that I think you bring into this, your sense of caring and the living theory of caring. And what Chris brought in was a quite new understanding of inclusion and empowerment working together. As you were speaking, Grace, that there was a quality of relationship that you were expressing, which again is non-impositional, but it invites a response. So that person that you're, if you like, caring for, I'd love it, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love just to look a little more carefully at these moments.
But that clinical supervision was one of those moments, wasn't it? Because it was everyone around the table, and it was sort of opening up the space for everyone to feel able to contribute. And so it was sort of, it kind of all snowballed from one to the other as each person added their bit, and it was quite collaborative, and isn't it? It feels like those clinical supervision, because I've just started taking over clinical supervision, so I've got no idea what they were like before, but it just felt like it was one of these, almost like a bit like this kind of space, but in terms of with a more goal orientated. You know, you bring your issue and then everybody works on it together. And that I could see during that the weight lifting off your shoulders, because you came in feeling quite heavy with this problem, and you left looking lighter, like you had a way forward that you felt was going to be, and you had the support of everybody to help you to go off and do that.
Yeah.
It's like team coaching in reverse.
Is it?
But it's not about a manager or the coach in the team coaching their team. It's like the team coaching someone else by the questions they're asking and their reactions.
Okay.
Cool.
No, you go first.
Yeah, no, there's something really important in that about, if you like, belonging to a community, and we don't yet know how to almost represent or explain the influence of a community, literally with the individual. So this part of what you're doing with your living theory of caring, this is why I'm really excited, if you like, about what it is that we're doing, because this takes place in the Carers Centre.
Can you just say that again? We can't yet explain the influence of community with the individual.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that when Lynn said that, you know, that it was a matter of the community responding to the individual, like with Grace.
Yes.
And if you like, learning is taking place, that what Grace, you know, creatively will be responding.
Yeah.
And if we try and explain the influence of a community with the individual, it's quite difficult to get at the underlying values. You know, as we go on.
Give us a concrete example of what that looks like, because I've been in many situations where the groups have actually specifically been to develop support for individuals, and then what each gets from it. Somewhat sense, so supporting other people learn from that process. So I've been in a lot of those groups. What is it that you mean?
It's linked to what you've been on about, which I like very much. And it comes out of the African notion of Ubuntu, that sense of I am because we are. Now what Marie did was add to that. But yes, don't forget that we are because I am. So if any one of us came out of this context now, the we changes. Now at the moment, we haven't got anything that actually shows our influence, because we've been meeting, you know, every Fridays we have the conversations. With the individual, like with Andy, Andy goes like this, yeah? And it's great to see you today, because when you were describing it...
Do you mean in his person or in his attendance?
No.
Yes,
No,
elaborate.
Yeah, well, okay.
Please,
Okay, right,
elaborate for that insight.
Right, today, Andy comes in, and it's great, because there's an energy there. He comes into the room, I feel, oh, it's great to see you.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd said a fortnight ago, Andy was a bit down in the dumps, you know, because... You know, what happened over this last week with getting this, you know, the 1,000 for the blog, you know, it's just that recognition.
Yeah.
Now, that resilience that Andy is showing over years, actually, because the sensitivity of the artist, I do think, influences the response to one's life. And so, this sense of your back, you know, it's with a kind of creative energy. Yeah, for the moment. Bringing that sense of what we're all individually contributing, but I do feel there is a we, because each week we come and we're each contributing individually, but we have yet to produce, if you like, a valid explanation of our influence, both together and as individuals. Anyway, that's it. Well, that's what I'm trying to say.
That's what he's struggling with.
I'm saying, I don't know what, that's the issue.
But it doesn't look like anything, does it?
No, we're creating it. Yeah.
Because it's beyond logic. It's beyond logic, and it is when you operate from a total sense of yourself, and so therefore you take your. The other week you said, when we were talking about, you responded to me and you said, I respond from here, and then you were doing this.
Yeah.
And it was, you do it, but it's beyond logic. So there aren't any words and there aren't any pictures. There is a nothingness. So what we do is create a space of nothingness for the other to then feel safe to be creative within. But that's still, exactly. There's no, even as I start, William would talk about quantum. If William was here, he'd get that because he said all there is love. So then what you also said is explain the influence of the community, but we can't get to the values. So you're wanting a value. It's because we can describe, but what are values? You can't really describe them because they're so individual.
We could look at this, because we work in a team which we're all very secure in, aren't we? That there's a great feeling of, togetherness, and of course there's always threats on us because we've such a well-functioning team. There's great threats on us that we're going to be split up and live elsewhere where people are not functioning very well. And that's on us again. It's been a topic of conversation all week, actually. There's a great deal of distress. And everybody recognises it. Everybody recognises this feeling of wanting to be part of this team and really enjoying it. But we could try and work out, couldn't we? We could really try and work out what it is. Why is it so jolly good?
I mean, I think we all sort of allow each other to be who we are, and we value what each person has to contribute. We're all very different and get things done in our own way. And I think we respect that, don't we?
Yeah.
I think.
And when you turn up, you know that everyone's going to think you're okay.
Absolutely.
There's room to be obscene. Because I use it quite a lot. Just to be a bit pushing the edge and
I don't think
that's what we're talking about.
Nobody expects conformity. I think everybody's a bit, certainly from you.
What's giving me real distress is I feel you haven't had your question answered, and that's really bugging the hell out of me.
But I think it's because Jack has. I've seen Jack do it a few times, where you say sometimes we haven't got a word for it, is what you normally say, and this is a bit of an extension of not having a word for it. And it's about trying to, I don't know if it's because you want to sort of make public the what's happening in Conversation Cafe, and that it's not enough just to have on the living poster there is a Conversation Cafe. You want to get into the nuts and bolts of what is really going on to give it a kind of public.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. When you say, my question hasn't been answered, it's not a question that I think we can just answer quickly. Now, when Robin said what she said, this is part of the answer, that I'm actually hopefully will move towards, because I think if Jack and, say, Robin start to look at moving on up, out of your gathering, there is a focus, and that is actually, it feels very constructive with quite a lot of women who are having issues to do with postnatal depression. Sorry.
I was actually really talking about the whole health.
Yeah, the whole health visiting.
Okay.
The health
But it's about health visiting.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it is true, because when I try and describe this group, so Jane, who's just come in, said, so, what is Conversation Cafe? I was like, I don't really know. So I tried to give a bit of a history, and then I tried to say, if you did come, then you just have to be mindful that Jack and Marie will try and make you write something, and probably try and study something, because there's a theme. But really it's about everybody getting together and supporting each other in whatever context they're in, and that's why it's so nice. It's because everybody comes from such different contexts, and that you don't really have to come from anywhere to be able to come along and enjoy it. But you kind of just have to suck it and see. And that was as far as I could get, really, what Conversation Cafe is. And then I said, but if you want to come, you'd be very welcome to, and just see how you get on with it.
Give them a health warning.
Well, the health warning was that they might, have to write it. But
because it is. I think
what health warning did I give you? Because I remember we talked about you coming.
You didn't invite me.
Who invited you?
Clive.
Clive invited you, yeah. He's
But Clive banged out because he said it wasn't for him.
Yeah.
So I felt I was thrown to the lions.
Oh, don't be nice, Lion.
Exactly. And do you know what that is? It's this word. It is. Do you know what happened? Do you remember then? I think it was the second time. Second time I'd been and I met Sheila. And Sheila and I had this, that something happened between, and it still happens between Sheila and I cannot explain. Sheila's presence is just phenomenal for me. I don't know whether she knows it or not, but it is. And I could feel myself really wanting to do this. So afterwards, we continued out there, and then was it Janine then said, and the following week, you came back and said,
Yeah.
if we're going to keep our, do the conversation cafe, don't take it out there afterwards, because it disrupts carers. Well,
You are okay, yeah.
there was just Sheila and I continuing our discussion out there. So I was really, at the moment, I was just mortified that my presence out there had then done that. But it wasn't just mine, it was, I was just having a conversation with Sheila. So there was this power in there, but what I've learnt from it, and it's only in the last week, my darling, because I felt mortified, but I was able to address it with
Yeah,
you.
we talked through a long
And we
time.
talked through about it, but it was the fact that the energy that we created in here, Sheila and I took out there, we're both carers in our own right. We were just having a bit of a life, the universe, everything is just lovely. But what I realised, and it's that word Ubuntu that you keep coming up, that is referenced in this book, which is a woman who's, Sarah Weddy I've talked about, who's got this mission about how can I stop suffering as a result of war. That's her mission, and that's what she does. And she worked with Desmond Tutu, and it was Tutu that she refers to Ubuntu. She also refers to Otto Scharmer, with Leading from the Emerging Future, who did the MOOC course that I did last year, and it's Theory U. And the Theory U is that you've got the 4 levels of listening, and that's, so the first is just the wallflower talk, and then you go through dialogue, then you go through a debate, where you've got conflict, then you get to the bottom. And what we create in here is what they have at the bottom, which is real listening, where you're listening with your whole self, and you're in this very vulnerable place, because you just accept that the other person, you know, whatever goes on in here, we have to have the confidence that, you know, if you crumble, if you can't stand it, then you'll sort yourself outside, because this is not what this is about. But this, they developed the Presencing Institute from this, and in the Presencing Institute, it's an action research organisation, the Presencing Institute. So they do, it's almost like constellations, but it's not constellations, because constellations from a family therapy point of view, it's not that, it's based actually on the arts and on ancient dance moves, because it has this movement around. So it's how can we move, and it's the information is in movement. So I know something, what I offer here. So I remember when we were talking last week about hope, you were saying, I've got hope on this hand, and it's like this, and then it's like that. So you're demonstrating with your body. And so what we do is then there's a thing called crystallising, which is then when we get an idea and we start, it's very vulnerable because you don't really know. So that's where we are at the moment, with you saying, yeah, but there's something. Then you get into a prototype. And the prototyping, an example of that would be a bit like, well, Clive came in here, he then went out of there, but then sent me in here, and then discovers that actually I found my purpose through being in here. Then he buzzes it back. That was a little prototype. So then how do we take that? Then it comes into the final stage, is what they call co-creating. And how do we co-create? And in order to do that, you have to have a shared intention. And what's the shared intention? And that's the thing that's, for me, that, and I take ownership of that, because I don't know that it's going to answer your question, but that's what's missing. If you wanted something that you're asking for, is what's the shared intention, what's the shared purpose of this? Now, Andy's sitting over there, and I can see that there's something going on, and I just need, when you talked about, you came in, and you said, oh, Andy's here, and I walked through and I thought, great, Andy's here, and I looked at him, and I gave him a great big smile, and he sort of went, and I thought, oh, I'm pleased to see you. see you. I was
Sorry.
so pleased to see
Sorry,
you.
Rachel. That's just me.
I know, and I know
My face gives me away all the time.
and that's the thing with
on lots
artists
of levels
and
about
actors.
different things.
And we're all
And it
act-
might not have been about you, by the way. My facial expression may not have been driven by you
I know.
or your responses.
I
or
know.
any-
I know.
It's probably more about the fact I've got a splitting headache.
Oh,
But apart from that,
Yeah.
I think what you said there was quite important because no, because the point about the shared intention.
Offered you.
I know, the shared intention comes from action learning sets.
Yeah.
It's like when we do the buzz, it's one of the things that winds me up sometimes actually. When we do the buzz in an action learning set, you say what has happened for you since the last time you met. Therefore, it's how that action, reflection, learning, doing has progressed.
Yeah,
Where
it's
it's
got
come to.
structured.
So that's the structure of an action learning set, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
With living theory, the shared intention emerges from our discussion. With action research learning set, the intention is to see what has happened, reflect on it without judgment,
Yeah.
in order to then move on to it. With us, with the living theory, get me if I'm wrong,
No.
but the shared intention emerges. There's no intention about coming here. We all bring our own intention about coming here and our own reasons for being here. And we own the responsibility for our own feelings after we've left. What happens is the shared intention emerges from this session today
It's
and
not
from
shared.
next week.
It's not necessarily
Well,
shared.
Yeah, but
There is,
but
there comes a
not
point
everybody
at
might
which
want one.
everybody comes together and agrees
No, I don't
about
think we do.
something.
No, because
We
I'm-
argue
I'm-
it through,
I'm
we
sure
come through the
that I've got
process.
something out of what you said, which I'd love to tell you about, which
Right.
actually is probably not of interest to anybody else particularly, but it's something that I think, we could really look at that.
Mm.
But so I think that everybody's taking out, so they're
Yeah,
bringing their own
everybody
stuff
else
and they're taking
takes
their own
out what
stuff.
they get.
But I don't know that how much sharing, except
I think there is a
climate.
shared intention.
Do you reckon?
Let me try it out and say it's wrong.
I think it emerges, but that's one of the reasons Jack has a problem in trying to explain
I
it.
think you're trying to fit it into an action research framework. I think there is a shared intention, which is why some people come in and some people it's not for them. And I was looking with, I'm losing it.
Maybe Lynn.
Yeah, Lynn.
She's lost it.
Definitely lost it. Because Lynn has been part of this group even before you came into it. So it was, and the shared intention, I think, is that we want to contribute towards the flourishing of humanity. How that it gets expressed in the detail of actions, I think, varies. But we do have a shared intention. And I think that the buzz, because it is a, I don't know, you say we haven't got an explanation, it's like your love fest, I think it describes it really well. Just to love somebody, sometimes you don't like them. But it's that energy, you actually walk out thinking, yeah, I'll come again next week.
And for me, because we create loving kindness in its true sense of the word,
Yeah.
and that's why I come, because I know that I will get loving kindness in here. If I've had a shitty week, exactly,
Yeah.
because you represent me shitty week for last week and shitty week for next week, you know. But right now there'll be loving kindness, and I said to somebody, it was actually we've got a cleaner, and she's the most lovely, the person that you just want to keep forever, and she's so strong and vulnerable at the same time. I said, right. So if we're not having loving kindness in here, then everybody can fuck off. That was it. And that's how I got
home.
Okay. And so I've got this thing that I think,
I think that sums it up really.
loving kindness, then you can fuck off.
Yes. So I got most of the finish.
Do you know what I got out of that? I think that's tremendous. I'll put it into words because.
I thought we had it in words. I thought
No,
that was
no,
perfect.
Yeah, you got it, it's coffee.
No, that your you. What
Theory you.
Yeah, theory you. what that did for me was to remind me that I made this great claim that we knew something about moving on up, and that was that one of the things that we managed to do, and it was a great revelation to me, there's a movement through each group from containment, because these women need to be held, very much held at the beginning because they're wobbly, to at the end, the best scenario is that they begin to join us as collaborators in the movement. And great, we've done it, we've cracked it, we understand that's what we're doing, this is what our aim is. But actually, what I got from that, because of the dot at the bottom with the U, is that what the hell happens? We haven't even started thinking about what's going on, what are the stages that happen before we get from, because they don't all get to collaboration, some of them leave, you know, feeling better, but haven't got there, they're not coming back to help us run the groups or anything. So that's what I got out.
Can I just say,
Sorry.
one of the last doctoral supervisions I did at Bath was a guy called Keith Kinsella. He was working at Exeter University, and it was all about his coaching, but it was grounded in Sharma's notion of present-sing. And I'll send you the abstract because it might just resonate, you know, with what we're talking about. Okay? Because I think
what do you want to know beyond what Sharma did? Hasn't he done it? You need something.
No.
Yeah.
I'll try and bring next week, as I said. No, he hasn't.
But it bugs the hell out of me the whole week until next week.
But that's because you're meant to sit and mull on it. Come back with new insights. It's really hard work.
Because the Sharma thing, it was a real revelation for me.
Yeah.
But there's something else, isn't
But it's how you take trauma and make it contextualised.
It's a potential of that's what we do, and we just make it a new.
And I don't know what Sharma said.
It doesn't stop me. Speaking with great authority. It's one of Sam's most endearing features, isn't it?
That's what I mean. They're trying not to have